Hi guys, y'all knew I wasn't going to be here today, so I just wanted to say hi. Hello. Hope that you all are very well behaved today, which I know that you will be. You have a video lesson coming, which I told you about, so make sure that you pay attention to that. I'm going to go slowly because I know that's kind of weird watching a video lesson as a class, but the good thing is you've already learned a lot of this content, so that'll make today a lot easier because we spent the last 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, going over this. If you need help, then you can go see another math teacher after school or before school. Miss Young across the hall from me, she is great, and she teaches Algebra 1, and she's been teaching this stuff all week. So she's a great resource to go to. If you have questions, you can also text me on my Remind. I'll make sure to put that information at the end of this video if you want to join the Remind, and I will gladly respond to it. So again, I hope that you guys are on your absolute best behavior. Not I hope, I'm sorry, let me change that. You will be on your absolute best behavior today. Be nice to the sub, be respectful, be polite, pay attention, and do your work. And I'll see you on Friday. So we are starting 14.1, which today we're just talking about arithmetic sequences. And you're like, oh, awesome, I already know this and I'm already really good at this. It's just a couple things to remember. We said that a sequence was some sort of pattern. We said that a sequence was some sort of pattern where we're doing something every time. And in this case, if it's an arithmetic sequence, then that means that... So let me highlight this. If it's an arithmetic sequence, that means that we are adding or subtracting. We are either adding or subtracting the same thing every time. And this should not be new information to you, okay? We've again been talking about this for 2 days. So if it's arithmetic, that means that you are adding or subtracting the same thing every single time. So our job today is just to figure out if they're arithmetic, and then we're going to learn a different way to write our problems. We've also spent some time talking about these weird looking A with the subscript things. So remember, A1 was the first term in the pattern. A4 would then be the which term? Okay, fourth term in the pattern. And A12 would be which term in the pattern? Very good, it'd be the 12th term in the pattern. So, and again, that's information that you already know. And every term has a specific position. It has a specific place in the sequence. We also learned that the difference between each of these numbers, like what you're adding or subtracting every time, is called the common difference. We've also learned that it's called the common difference, and we'll use the letter D to represent that. So we're going to look at 4 problems down here, and we're going to decide if they are arithmetic or not. And if they're not, then we know what they are because we've already learned this. If they're not arithmetic, then that means they are what type of sequence? Geometric. Good. So let's start with problem 1. So my numbers are 9, 14, 19, 24. So we just have to figure out what's happening every time. So tell me what's happening. Right, we're going to add 5 every time. So that means that our common difference is 5, because every time from 9 to 14 I add 5. From 14 to 19 I add 5. From 19 to 24 I add 5. And I could continue that if I wanted to, but it didn't ask me to. It just asked me to figure out if it was arithmetic, which it is. And again, the reason we know it's arithmetic is because we're adding or subtracting something every time. So 1 was yes, and it was the common difference was 5. Okay, look at problem 2. So you've got to figure out what's happening every time in this pattern. So we're going from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 7. That one's a little bit tricky. So let's write out what's happening. So to get from 1 to 2, what math am I doing? What am I adding or subtracting? Okay, I'm adding 1. What about to get from 2 to 4, what am I doing, adding or subtracting? Okay, I'm adding 2. And then what about to get from 4 to 7, what am I doing every time? I'm adding 3. So here's the question. Are these 3 numbers the same? The answer to that is no. So that means that this is not an arithmetic sequence. And the reason it's not an arithmetic sequence is I'm not adding the same thing every time. It's not arithmetic because I'm not adding the same thing every time. And I know some of you are thinking, well, but like from here to here, I'm adding 1 every time. That's true, but that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at the difference between our numbers and our pattern to be the same every time, and they weren't. Okay, look at problem 3. So we've got to figure out what's happening every time. Like, what's our pattern to get from -7 to -14 to -21 to -28? So think about that for a second. What math am I doing every time? Okay, someone probably said that you're multiplying by 2. That's true. To get from -7 to -14, you multiply by 2, but that's not true from -14 and -21. So every time I am subtracting 7. So that means that this is arithmetic, and my common difference is -7. Okay, and we're going to look at problem 4. So we have -1 to -3 to -9 to -27. So what's happening every time? Are we adding something every time? No, we're not. Are we subtracting something every time? Nope. Are we multiplying by something every time? Okay, we are. What are we multiplying by every time? Yes, by 3. That every time we're multiplying this by 3. Because -1 times 3 is -3. -3 times 3 is -9. -9 times 3 is -27. So is this an arithmetic sequence? It is not. And so what kind of sequence is this? Good. It is a geometric. So this would be geometric. Okay, I'm going to do 6 with you, and then we're going to flip over to the back, and we're going to do the rest of this. So problem 6 says to write the next 3 terms of an arithmetic sequence where A1 equals 7. So remember, if they're giving us A1, we've talked about this, they're giving us our first term, so we know that A1, I'm going to write that over here, equals 7, and it wants to know the next 3, so A2, the second term, A3, the third term, A4, the fourth term. And then it tells us that D equals -3.5. What does that mean if D equals -3.5? Okay, it means that every time you're going to subtract 3.5 to get from one number to the next. And you guys are really good at this because we've been doing this for the last couple days. So, and you can use your calculators on your phone if you need to figure that out. 7 minus 3.5 is 3.5. And then, so the second term in the pattern would be 3.5. What would be the third term in the pattern? Okay, it'd be 0. And we got that because we did 3.5 minus 3.5. Okay, what about the fourth term in the pattern? Good, -3.5. So again, we just had to subtract 3.5 every time, and that's how we found the next number in our pattern. Something I want you to remember is that these notes are just over arithmetic. So that means today, all you'll really be doing is you will be adding and subtracting. Okay? All of our patterns today are going to be adding or subtracting. There may be some that you have to decide if they're adding or subtracting, but that's really all that they are, is they're adding or subtracting. So let's look at the back of the notes. So the formulas we've been working on, or what we've been doing is we've been finding a number in the pattern, but in order to know that number, we had to find the one before it. We had to go through this whole long process. Well, today what we're going to do is we're just going to learn how to find any number in the pattern based on where that number is. So I want you to write this formula down. And this is the formula you're going to use today. And this is the explicit formula, the one you guys kept asking me about. The explicit formula says AN equals, so AN equals A1 plus n minus 1 times D. This is the formula you guys are going to be writing today. And it's going to work out really well, and it's going to be really easy for us. So I want you to remember we said AN stood for any term in the problem, is equal to A1. Well, what is A1 in this problem, in any problem? When we say A1, which term are we talking about? Right, we're talking about the first term. And then we said D was our common difference. So this is a different formula than what we wrote on Monday and Tuesday, but this formula is way easier. Okay, this formula is way easier for us to work with. So we're going to apply this formula to a problem. We're going to do problem 9. So we're going to start with problem 9. You're going to need that formula, so make sure you look up there at it. So I have this problem. I have 14, 11, 8, and 5. So we've got to figure out what's happening every time. How are you getting from 14 to 11 and 11 to 8 and 8 to 5? So what math is happening every time? Good, we're subtracting 3 each time. So that means that our common difference is 3. Okay, well then it asks us another question. It asks us what is A1, and what is A1? Just in general, what does A1 stand for? Okay, it's the first term, and the first term in this pattern is 14. All right, so now we're going to write our formula. Okay, so I'm going to write it underneath here so we have it. You can see it on the screen. Our formula says AN equals A1 plus N minus 1 times D. All we're going to do is we're going to take these numbers that we just found and we're going to plug them in. So remember, we already said that A1 was 14, so I'm going to write a 14 there. So 14 plus, I'm going to leave N minus 1 alone. Every time you're going to leave N minus 1 alone. And then it says times D, and D in our problem was -3. So this is my formula. 14 plus N minus 1 times -3. And I can use this formula to find any number in the pattern. I can use this to find any number in the pattern. That means, the good thing is that means I don't have to keep going. I don't have to keep subtracting 3 every time to find something. So like if I find A16, this means, which number does it want me to find? If it says A16, which term am I finding? Okay, I'm going to write that down. It means I'm finding the 16th term. Well, I don't think that you want to keep subtracting 3 over and over and over and over and over again till you get to the 16th term. So what we can do instead is to find the 16th term, I can use my formula that we just created. I can use this formula right here. So I'm going to rewrite that. Underneath, I'm going to write 14 plus, I'm going to leave N blank, and I'll tell you why in a second, minus 1 times -3. All we have to do is we have to plug in a number for N. And are you ready for this? N is 16 in this problem because that's the term that I want. So I'm going to plug in 16 here. And then I can use my calculator to do all the math for me. So I want you to type that in, 14 plus 16 minus 1 times -3. You can use Desmos, you can use your calculator on your phone. If you're in the classroom, you can use the TI-84s if you need to, but you're just plugging in those numbers and seeing what it gives you. Don't blurt it out loud. Again, you're just typing that in. I'm just giving you a minute to do that. And when you type that in, you should have gotten -31. At least that's what I got. So that means that the 16th term in this problem is -31. If you were to keep going and you were to follow this pattern and just keep subtracting 3 until you got to the 16th number, that 16th number would be -31. Isn't that a lot easier than having to do this like 16 more times or 14 more times or whatever it would be? I think so. Let's look at problem 10. Okay, so the first thing we need to figure out is we need to figure out what is our common difference. What's happening every time? So I have 1 to 0, 0 to -1, -1 to -2. Mathematically, what am I doing each time here? Okay, I'm subtracting 1. So that means my common difference in this problem would be -1. Very good. Okay, what about A1? What is A1 in general? Not for this problem, but just in general. What does A1 stand for? Okay, it's the first term. So what's my first term here? Good, it's 1. So now I can go through and I can write my equation. Okay, I'm going to write that formula, the one that we wrote at the top. I'm going to write underneath this just so I have it handy. So AN equals A1 plus N minus 1 times D. I'm just writing it there so we can see it and you can see what I'm doing. Remember, you've got it written at the top of your paper. So I know what D is and I know what A1 is, so I can rewrite this problem with those numbers. So I'm going to write 1 plus N minus 1 times -1. That's my formula. That means that this formula is going to give me any number I want in the problem. So let's look at 20 at the next part. It says find A of 23. So which term do I want in the problem? Good, I want the 23rd term. So to find the 23rd term, I have a couple options. I can subtract 1 20 more times, or I can use this formula I just wrote and I can figure it out that way, which is going to be a lot easier. So I'm going to rewrite that formula, 1 plus, I'm going to leave N blank because I'm about to plug something in for N. Okay, and for N, I'm going to plug in whatever number I'm looking for. What number am I looking for in this problem? Yes, the 23rd number. So I'm going to put 23 there. So then I'm going to just type all that in the calculator. So I'm going to let you guys do the math. That was not the bell for you to leave, so don't get up. Right now you're just typing stuff in the calculator. And you should have gotten, what'd you get? What'd you get? Yeah, -21. So that means the 23rd number in my pattern would have been -21. So our final problem is problem 11. So Taryn deposits $50 in a savings account on the first day and adds $10 each day after that. We're supposed to write a function that represents the arithmetic sequence. Well, the only way we know to write a function is to write our AN equals A1 plus N minus 1 times D, times our common difference. And let's think about what we said earlier, what we talked about up here. We know that A1 represents the first number in our pattern. So in this problem, what's our first number? Okay, it'd be 50. So AN equals 50 because that's what we're starting with, and that's what it says. It says she has $50 on the first day. Plus N minus 1, we're going to leave that alone, times D. D is our common difference. Remember, our common difference is what we're adding or subtracting each time. And if you continue reading the problem and notice it says that she adds $10 each day. So that means our common difference is going to be 10. I know that it asks you to do a lot more, but we're not going to do that. So right now, I want you to get out your homework and we're going to look at that together. I'm going to answer some questions about it. Okay, we're going to start with question 5. I'm going to do a couple problems off the homework, and then your job will be to finish the rest of the assignment. So problem 5. Our instructions say to find the first several terms given the first several terms in the sequence and find the next 3 terms. So we have some numbers here in our sequence. We have our first number is 4, so that's going to be A1. Our second number is 5 1/2, so that's A2. Our third number is 7, so that's A3. And our fourth number is 8 1/2, so that would be A4. So in order to find the rest of the numbers in the pattern, in the sequence, I've got to figure out what's happening every time. And I know that sometimes it is difficult to figure out what the pattern is. Some of you are struggling. You can't see necessarily how to get from 4 to 5 1/2. Like, you know it's getting bigger, so you know you're adding something, but the question is, what are you adding? So I want to show you a way that you can find that number every time. So to find that number, to figure out how much it's increasing by, I'm going to subtract, which sounds weird, but it'll make sense because I'm undoing something. So I'm going to do 5 1/2 minus 4. Now, when you type that in the calculator, you need to type this in. Instead of 5 1/2, you need to type in 5.5. Okay, same with 8 1/2. You need to type in 8.5. So in order to figure out what's happening with this problem, we have to do mathematically 5.5 minus 4. And put that in the calculator. Okay, what does that give you? All right, it does give you 1.5. So what that means is that we're adding 1.5 every time. And we could check that again. We could do the next one. We could do 7 minus 5.5, and guess what that's going to give us? 1.5. So that means every time for this problem, I am adding 1.5. So in order to find the fifth term in this pattern, I need to continue that. I need to add 1.5, and I'm just going to keep doing that over and over and over. Okay, I'm going to move on to problem 6. So it asks you to write a formula for the nth term. When it's asking you to do this, you need to write this formula here. When you're writing this formula, that is your AN equals A1 plus N minus 1 times D. That's the formula you're going to be using, and you're going to use this for problems 6 through 12. All of them. So for problem 6, it tells us what A1 is. It says A1 is 12, so all we have to do is plug in 12. So I'm going to write AN equals, instead of A1, I'm going to put 12, because that's what A1 is, plus N minus 1 times D. D is our common difference. Well, in this case, our common difference, they give it to us. You don't even have to do any work. They tell you that D is -1. So that's what we're going to put there. Make sure that 12 is blue. So all I did was I took what A1 was and I plugged it in where A1 is. I took what D was and I plugged it in where D was. So there is my formula. So I've done that part of the instructions. So then it says, for each sequence, find the 23rd term. That means I want the 23rd number in this pattern. So remember we said, and what we did on our notes was that if we want the 23rd number, then we can plug in 23 for N. So I'm going to write it again, but this time I have AN equals 12 plus, instead of N, I'm going to plug in 23 minus 1 times -1. And I'm going to change one more thing. I'm going to change this N right here to 23, because that's really what I want, is the 23rd term. So that tells me that A23, or my 23rd term is, okay, put that in the calculator for me and see what you get. I got -10. Hopefully you did too. If not, then you need to go back and check what you typed in. So there's our answer. That is our entire answer to this problem, to problem 6. Okay, so make sure you read your instructions. You have now 10 problems left to do for homework. Okay, you have 10 problems left to do. For 1, 2, and 3, you're deciding if they're arithmetic. So remember, if they're arithmetic, then you're adding the same thing every time. For number 4, you need to find the rest of the terms, fill in these terms here into these boxes. So 6 goes in A1, 2 goes in A2, -2 goes in A3. You need to figure out the pattern and find the rest of them. For 5, you need to find the rest of these terms. For 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, you need to find your formula, and then you need to find the 23rd term. So that means you need to plug in 23 like we did in our notes. See you guys on Friday.